Hi, sunshines. It has been a while, a long while since I have been here and made a video. And honestly, I have been taking the time to settle into thoughts of what I actually want to speak with you about and what I believe is interesting, what is helpful, but also what is important at the moment to address. And thanks to the retrograde transits so we have all experienced, I really took a step back to reflect on events, but also on the trajectory in which life is pushing us all to go, and the phase of consciousness we're about to go through, and the lessons it also brings us. And I greatly believe that any time we move through any phase or transition in life, it helps us to have an orientation or guidance to the overall picture or vision of what is going on, what the future holds, as lessons, as energy we need to evolve from and go into, instead of seeking to change, instead of resisting constantly. I wish there was no Mercury retrograde and so on. Instead of running away or even try to predict it or predict specific events, but have this guiding vision so you can actually have the courage to live it and find the empowerment within you to create, no matter what is going on the outside. Because if there is one thing in your control that you can ever predict, it is the level of peace you find within, despite the changes in your external environment. If you try to keep the peace outside of you, but internally you're still suppressing what you need, what you want, then this compromise is going to cost you a lot. And it's going to cost your life. Because believe me, life without peace within is the greatest hell on earth. Yes, we are moving away from this religious separation that hell or heaven exists anywhere else outside of us. They all live within, and the experience of each is determined by your own understanding of who you are and having the courage to live it. Because see, no one can predict anything. No astrologer, no psychic, no cosmic phenomenon. But they all, if evolved enough of course, can provide clarity about what you are here to learn, to anticipate the nature of any forthcoming events, and then also choose if you want to have a hard time by rejecting that self-knowledge and this disapprove of yourself and resist these changes and these lessons you are here to learn in that period of time, or if you want to actually create and experience a different future for yourself, then you can accept the given task and have the courage to live it as you. And the only true form of peace can be found when we have the courage to live and be our true selves. But what does that even mean? When we have the courage to follow our desires formed from a very deep inner meaning and a need of joy being met. Courage to live in essence, regardless of whether the external environment validates us or agrees with us, as long as we have resolved our own inner conflict through the choices we have made. In a little bit, I will speak more on this topic, which is a lot in reference to Carl Jung's work of distinguishing the difference between persona identification and true self identification, and the impact it has on your life, meaning, happiness, and level of well-being, because this will be the main pressing psychological breakthrough and need for people to discover in the next 2 years. Also, this reminds me, I have been planning to make a video about the year of the snake, which we are currently in, where I will talk more about the symbolic meaning of this year. Whereas in this video, I'll speak more about the philosophical impact. And I think you will find the symbolic reference interesting, and it's going to also help you more easily digest this information, considering all perspectives, as it helps to seep in and make more sense when it is fully processed and all sides are being explored. And why we need to digest this information and really keep it into awareness as we move forward, so that we understand the consequences of our actions, but also determine what choices we should make now and how they impact our future results. Because everything we experience now is a consequence of actions previously taken, especially what you planted the seeds of since July 2023. And everything you choose to plant right now, you will see the consequences of in 2 years. So it's a good period of not expecting to see immediate results, but rather focus on the intention you're setting right now and what consequences you're truly seeking to face. Because at the end of the day, we do live in a dual reality, and what we plant can grow or can go in one of two directions, which are impacted by the intentions we are setting right now, whether they come from a place of personified ego or whether the intention comes from a place in connection to true identity. Meaning that since we speak about the year of the snake, it plays a symbol of transformation, whether that is related to the death of the self, causing further identity crisis, depression, and loss of meaning or transformation, or transformation that leads to rebirth of the self, creating a stronger essential foundation of self. Who am I? And find hope and meaning through your own empowered choices. And those choices that bring you closer to finding inner peace and harmony rather than awaken the conflict within you. Yet the choices will only be yours, and the result in the next 2 years of those choices or consequences you will carry the full responsibility for. Continuously excusing yourself with past traumas, how much you're traumatized or how much you're hurt, what your parents did to you, repeating the same old story won't serve you anymore. We had the last 2 years to confront these issues and work through them. And by now, we should have realized that past events happened to us when we were maybe 3 or 10 or 15 years old, but we're no longer that same age. They're going to be a part of our life, but we need to be able to integrate them now. And then after the age of 18, only we are in control of living according to our own principles in protection of our own individual needs and essence, even if those needs were not met before. And here I'm specifically speaking about the transit we're going to have, which is Saturn in Aries, which is going to come from June 2025 and last until April of 2028. A transit that calls for individuals to awaken to their true identity and connect to a real place of courage and confidence that is not dependent on external validation. And this will not happen by using excuses tied to the past for our own inability or inadequacies, but only through finding a reason to create it differently, more true and real. Because at the end of the day, we can all find excuses, but reason is something we can only choose to create by connecting to our true identity. And as I always say, even if you do not understand or speak the language of astrology, I only use it as a tool for interpretation, and beyond that, I work with Asimov philosophy, which incorporates many teachings to help us understand the greater spiritual meaning of our experience and life here on earth. Why we came here, who we are, and what our lessons as students in life are, and how to accept that reality. And speaking about being students, we all know that a part of going to school is having a schedule, a time schedule for attendance, for learning, and to help us structure our day to day, impacting our ability to stay productive and focused, which ultimately only serves us to achieve success, personal success. But as we all know, and also what I teach through Asana philosophy, we are given our own curriculum to follow, which is shown by our natal charts, and it perfectly explains what we need at home, at work, what habits and routines we need to cultivate in order for us to start understanding and integrating the self, but also learn what principles work for us. Because some schedules work for some and not for others. That's why we need to look at our own chart, our own curriculum. For example, imagine you're an entertainer and you need to have some food or dinner before your performance at midnight. Then your dinner time would be more like 10 p.m., let's say. Whereas someone who wakes up at 5 a.m. to go to work might already be sleeping by 10 p.m., so his dinner time would be more like 6 p.m. In this scenario, is there something right or wrong or better or worse if both people enjoy their work? No, it all comes down to having self-governing principles in order for you to sustain your schedule and yourself, but also continue to do that which you find fulfillment in. And the important thing to understand is that we cannot compare ourselves with others, which is actually one of the three axioms of Alcemon, as we all have different learning curriculums, which means that they require us all to have a different set of self-governing principles. So I like to call this new phase we're all entering into as the era of self-governing principles. And if somebody's using this terminology, then it came from here. Yet, in order to create these self-governing principles, we must start by understanding of the self and who we are first. Because in all honesty, the real pandemic of today's society comes from a lack of identity. Something that was completely distorted, dysfunctional, and brought all of this trauma, confusion, and pain and suffering that the collective experienced during the Piscean years. If we look at society trends formed nowadays, people begin to look and act more like a copy and paste rather than embracing your individuality and having an awareness of your own ability to create. Most of social media influences are formed around personas, and we have deviated from seeking depth and swayed into copying almost like this picture of perfect or some form of idealized representation, which in most cases that picture perfect vision, even when accomplished or set as a goal, still leaves many feeling empty on the inside. And usually these external trends, events, and patterns of actions always reflect our own inner perception. Everything in life is a cause and effect, and the cause starts from the mind, from our own perception, and that of our own selves. When that perception is unknown, undefined, it becomes highly influenced and susceptible to high external manipulation. So, with all this being said, we have become so easily manipulated when our choices are driven from a place of needing to find societal validation and belonging rather than seeking to discover self validation, which also impacts why being in a healthy relationship is such or has become such a problem. But that's a whole another different topic. As one great quote by Jung says, if you don't know who you are, the world will tell you. And Jung himself is someone who heavily spoke about the differences between creating a persona versus connecting to the true self, which creates this fragmented identity, inner conflict, and disconnection. But let's first take a look at both and then also understand the way they function in our life. A persona is a crafted image, not who we truly are, but rather a societal mask for concealing the true nature of a person. A persona in your natal chart is generally well portrayed by your ascendant and Mars sign. So here, when we speak about the individual consultations, we can craft the persona that serves us a function in this life, but also understand why we have chosen that specific mask. Personas are created and show how we present ourselves to others and how we want them to see us. Again, it is our social mask, our outer face to integrate, to connect, to fit in, rather than show who we are in our core. And we need to understand that personas is what we normally identify with, but they are guarded by our ego because they are necessary for social functioning. But this is only one very small component of who we are as a self. We need to strike a balance between societal conformity and authenticity or true self, or we run the risk of over-identification with the persona because it is something easily accessible into our conscious awareness, which can also be dangerous and result in loss of self. And the way this looks like is when one becomes overly concerned with your image, with your looks, how others perceive you, while neglecting your true feelings and desires. And this creates a fragmented sense of identity and a conflict between the true inner needs and desires and your outer behavior. And also, this loss of self or lack of knowing of the self creates deeply rooted fear, which leads to expectations that others will tame or attempt to somehow soothe that fear by creating guidelines for you, those that you need to follow in order for you to be validated and to gain a sense of identity, whether that is appearance related, gender related, function related, and so on. We seek for outer definition or guidance to follow to find security and clarity in who we are. And this means we have a fragmented sense of self. While true identity is something that comes into awareness in the unknown. Remember, it is a self-governing process by creating personal governing principles. But what do we do when we are faced in the unknown? We look for a guarantee. Guarantees that come in the form of external validation. And in most cases, thankfully, only after our late 30s and mid 40s, we usually start realizing that there is no guarantee in life. It all comes down to having principles by which we respect ourselves and expect no one else but us to voice them, assert them, and attend to them. The only guarantee we are going to get in this experience of certainty and peace we find within no matter what and who we are met with on the outside. This is the only guarantee we're ever going to get. And a very typical example we can see this play out is, let's say in our 20s, we would go out and stay up late and drink because, well, everybody does it. And the moment we start hitting 30, suddenly our choices change and we choose that maybe we don't want to go to that party or stay that late because we feel tired or because we need to make our time to wake up in the morning and work on a project or some creative schedule. We start even becoming more aware of ourselves and our true needs. And now we have started to turn to our insight, to listen and to guide us, and use this as our own source of validation and not just conform by what's on the outside. So, what to do when we are faced with the unknown? Yes, we do need to search for a guarantee, but not the peace that comes on the outside through external validation, but rather we need to search for a guarantee through self-knowledge that restores and helps us find the peace through internal validation. This is only possible by seeking to learn and find the peace within. And how do we do that? Well, this is what my work, private consultations, and events are created for. Self-inquiry, understanding, and focus on building our foundation and governing principles for life. Here for a moment, let's look at what are principles. Self-protecting principles that are derived from an awareness of the self are necessary to lead us to happiness, fulfillment, and peaceful inner experience. Why? Because you can go anywhere you want, or almost. You can be with anyone you want, or almost. Or you can run away as much as you want, but you can never run away from yourself. And principles are there in place for protecting the joy and happiness within. So you don't try to escape yourself, but rather start to find the joy in being. Because if we want to really speak about love and the courage you need to truly love, only one who has discovered the joy within, independent from any external validation or approval, is truly capable of love. Hence why my work is mainly focused on finding, or better said, awakening what the joy within feels like through the senses, as we have greatly forgotten what it is like to feel in touch and connected. I know that once you know that feeling, your soul is set free on the path to love. But if you or anyone else robs you from that inner joy, you forever remain a prisoner to validation and approval of others. Always questioning if you're truly loved, unable to connect with the freedom to be yourself, that love, only love, can empower you with. The thing is, if you don't know who you are, what makes you happy, what you need and value, it would be very difficult to create a self-governing principle, as there is disconnection from the true self, and this is foundational. And when we don't have self-governing principles, we live in fear. We feel malnourished, starved, deprived of love, depressed, undervalued, lacking meaning, confidence, and this impacts our whole life. It impacts our well-being and happiness all together. So let's see, what do principles look like and what do they actually serve? And I know some like to use this word boundaries, which for me is very limiting and hardening, while principles is a lot more honorable and expansive for building and for creation, in my opinion. But anyhow, principles do exist to protect your identity, defining your essence or essentials for existence. For example, somebody can perceive you as ugly while another can perceive you as beautiful, or one can see you as a very aggressive and pushy person while another sees you as very determined and willful person. The point is, projections will be placed on you from the outside world constantly. And if you continue to identify, or your awareness of self is only constructed by projections of what is beautiful, ugly, or right or wrong, you can never live by your own principles, but rather seek to please everyone else and attend to an image, a certain image for validation. And validation we seek when we do not prove and find it difficult to approve of ourselves. On the other hand, when we are governed by our own principles, when we have an awareness to the boundaries of ourselves, what is true and what is not for us, where we stand in life, and what function we are here to serve and fulfill. From this position, we make decisions and choices solely based on what is right for ourselves and free others from carrying the responsibilities for our poor decisions or inability to make any. And this includes our parents, partners, children, and friends, and those closest to us, which we love to burden with the responsibility for our poor or bad choices or inability to make any. But how do we develop self-governing principles? Well, number one, by knowing who we are, which we learn in consultations through asana philosophy, workshops I facilitate, but also we need to apply that knowledge. And I'll give you an example. I had a client, and after my last retreat, she wrote me a message: thank you so much, I got what I wanted, I'm so happy right now. And she shared with me a story with a guy that she met, and she said something like, I would always recommend you to everyone, you are amazing, so on. But my response to her was, I'm very happy, and this means a lot to me. And I always appreciate when somebody gives me feedback and tells me and fills me into their lives and what's going on after. And sometimes certain events happen months after we speak. But one thing I said to her, which it holds true, of course, for everything in life, that my function and role is just a guide, and I do my parts, and I provide you with the knowledge that is going to be helpful to you. But then your part is the other 50% to actually apply it and live it and use it to create your own reality in life. And she did that. So in a sense, she did it herself. It was not me who did it for her. Yes, I guided her. That's my contribution. But the rest, she did it. And knowing and also having this knowledge that you can do it once, and then you can do it a second time, and then you can do it a third time, and you start already realizing that the power, the ability lives in you. There are people who help you discover it, who guide you how to find it, who guide you how to see it, but it's there, it's within you. And this is the most exciting point we can get to, because that knowledge, that is true confidence, because you can apply it in this situation, but you can also use it and apply it in situation B and C and D. Also, we build self-governing principles. Once we have this self-awareness, then we develop the ability to voice those needs. I cannot tell you how difficult it is for people to begin to voice those needs. And it sometimes we do need to have the courage, or at the beginning, to find the courage to voice those needs, and that they matter. And that happens when we begin to live with this inner acceptance of this awareness, knowing that we are the sole responsible entity to be the voice of our needs. Because what happens when we have unmet needs? We feel overburdened, and we as a result, begin to overburden others by complaining, making excuses, being on the defensive, rather than living from a place of reason and self importance. As an example, if we don't put our oxygen mask first, we cannot provide oxygen in another person's life either. And the issue arises when we don't want to admit that we need and expect others to meet them, still being in the role almost of a child, expecting your mothers or caregiver to attend to each and every one of your whimsicals. And from this place, you don't and cannot create any relationship while you continue to replay this parent-child dynamic. And here, speaking about emotional intelligence, which I really don't like this word because it's making something so basic sound so fancy and superior almost. It simply means having an awareness to our emotional needs in relation to another and being able to communicate them and verbalize them. And if you want to be miserable and have excuses to complain, then this is something you can do alone. You do not need another person for that. So having principles and self-governing principles not only protect you, your own mental and emotional and physical well-being, but also those of others, and especially of those closest to you. And if you truly care about the people around you, then you do need to start building on those self-governing principles and live up to them. And this is my prediction that this is going to be your new religion, your own personally crafted reason to be happy. For example, some of my principles are respect, integrity, accountability, and clarity. And to narrow it down, how does that look like in a dynamic or in a relationship with another person? For example, I respect my time and the energy I invest in someone, and the energy I invest in communicating with you as well, as I do it out of my pure choice because I believe or found it important. So if I made that choice, I would want you to invest the same amount of time in me as well. If I choose something important, I want to be treated as something important, not as an option. And if I feel that I'm treated as an option, then I'll pull myself away. I'm not going to expect you to change because I prioritize investing my time and energy in things and people who treat me as their only choice because I like that. I find my joy in devotion. I find joy in reciprocity. I find joy in commitment and reciprocal investment, that it's mutual and it's shared. I don't experience joy and well-being and I don't feel valued if I put myself in a position where I'm treated as an option. In this case, if I choose to stay in any dynamic where I'm treated as an option, neither I'm fulfilled nor I'm able to give you my all any longer. And in this situation, that is a lose-lose case. So of course, I would communicate my need. For example, if I want to be in an exclusive partnership or what exactly I'm looking for, and not be delusional that, let's say, a polyamorous relationship is something that works for me when I know it is not going to. And again, all of this comes from a place of awareness of your own needs. And this can be a both in intimate relationships and business relationships and so on. Which brings me to my second point of what is really important for me, which is clarity. Clarity of where we stand. Nothing can be more antagonizing when you don't know where you stand in relation to another. So clarity and direct and clear communication is another one of my core principles because for me, it is really important that we can, as clearly as possible, communicate what you can expect from me and what I can expect from you, what you bring to the table, what you offer and what I can bring to the table and offer, Because when there is no outline, when there's secretly kept expectations and unspoken needs, then those turn into demands. And then demands, or those unmet needs, that you or me, we provide something that we haven't really clarified from the beginning, or we haven't really agreed upon, or ignoring whether we are able to or not to, due to this lack of clarification, can bring upon way too much confusion. And confusion doesn't feel very peaceful and joyful to me. See, principles are things we can't live without. We can build upon them, but they're usually set. It is not something we change, as they hold our foundation steady. If we want to feel happy, if we want to find meaning, if we want to feel at peace within, then it is our job to know ourselves, what we need, who we are, and great self-governing principles. Because only then we can find the courage to be ourselves. Because eventually we know that what falls out of our lives, it's not a loss and was never in our greatest good anyhow. And what stays in our lives, it is essential for our being and peace of mind. In this case, we never live from a place of loss. And we don't need the ego to govern our lives. We do not need to be constantly on the defensive, but rather be empowered and bold to live by our own principles. Ego is something that needs defense. Excuses are a defensive mechanism, whereas principles provide the foundational structure for vitality and to thrive as happy and whole people. Principles create the foundation for love. They give you a reason to stand firm in your why. They provide with clarity and truth, and they're protected by the growing love born from this truth. I hope you found this information helpful and applicable to you. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if you need to inquire about a personal consultation, you can reach out to me. And I look forward to connecting with you, especially during my upcoming events. And I'm going to leave you with this. And please remember, no one can validate who you are. It is a choice only you can make to live boldly, free from validation and external expectations. Learning how to expect only from yourself. Taking responsibility for yourself and validating yourself. That is going to be your greatest source of power and intention to set your path and guide your choices ahead for the next at least 2.5 years, until we learn to turn any new behavior into a healthy habit. Thank you everybody for watching. It was great being back here. I will see you soon and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.